Hey guys, welcome to the stream. Today we are simply going to be looking at the current up-to-date best practices when it comes to making steel in your factory design. So what we have here is this is my starter factory expanded. This first section here, what it's doing is it's processing all the ore. So I'm directly above here, let's just go down here a little bit. You can see we have the hopper on the left there. Whoa, that's a little, there we go. So we have the hopper on the left followed by an elevator. And then there's a 2-meter conveyor there going into the back of the coal screen. And then from the coal screen, out the back of the coal screen is simply a right hand that goes into that storage silo. That's basically taking the coal out. Once the coal's out of the equation, then we can start working on everything else. We put the product out the front of the coal screen. We snap on a trommel, and out the front of the trommel, we snap on a shaker screen. So out the back of the trommel, you can see that we've got another right-hand angle piece, and that's going into our wash plant, which is hooked up to water over there. We've got our water put up on the grass. We have our water hooked up. That goes into another elevator, and it comes around through another trommel. The reason being is the first trommel separates the dirt and the pay dirt out of the equation. So the coal screen takes out the coal. The next one takes out the trommel is taking out the dirt and the pay dirt. The dirt and the pay dirt go through the wash plant. So the pay dirt becomes all of our valuable ores: iron, copper, lithium, aluminum, silver, like all the different ores that can be washed out of the pay dirt. They get separated there, and everything gets pushed forward. But this whole mix is contaminated. It still has dirt in it. So this second trommel over here, what it is doing is the dirt is being pulled and pushed out the back of the trommel, and it's dropping into that cell point there. So the dirt is automatically disappearing. And then out the front, we're pushing just our raw ores that need to be smelted, and they're landing on this belt in the center. Okay, so that takes care of that loop. And then we go through a shaker screen, because it's possible when we're digging that we actually get raw ores, like iron ore, copper ore, this kind of stuff. So we want to be able to separate that stuff out as well. So that's what the shaker screen will do there. And it's going to pull that stuff out the back, and it's going to push it down that belt as well. So what we want to have is so everything going down this belt is just ores to be smelted. Okay. So after the shaker screen, now we come up and we go through our crushers. We've got to have our jaw crusher first to break down the big stuff. Then we've got our cone crusher next to break down the small stuff. That's going to leave us with gravel. The gravel's going along on this top belt section here into our froth floater. You got to keep in mind, this is highly inefficient. Like 75% of what you put into a froth floater just becomes tailings, and that starts to accumulate real quick. But the tailings here, the bottom port on the froth floater is where your tailings come out. So I've just snapped the chute on there, and I'm dropping that stuff automatically down into another sail point that I've sunk in the ground here, right below that. So you can see there where it is directly above that sail point. Now what comes out of the top of the froth floater, that's all your ores again. So now this one is bringing those ores, this belt is bringing those ores and dropping it also onto this conveyor. I could put a merger in here. It's not necessary. They drop, they collect, they do what they're supposed to do. So all of this stuff comes along, and this takes up a tremendous amount of power. We'll look at that in a second. So that whole first step, basically just to separate my coal and produce my ore while simultaneously getting rid of my dirt, automatically selling my dirt, and automatically selling my tailings. That whole process, I put it on one power grid because it's easier to manage. And now we've got this little ramp up section here that drops down into a chute with a new power head, okay? So I can have a separate power network for my processing side of things. Okay. Now, on the processing side of things, the first smelter that I use, because I'm not going to be using iron ingots for this steel production, we're going to be making steel. So I want my high temp smelter first. That's going to take all of my iron and turn it into steel. If I use the low temp smelter, it's going to turn my iron into iron ingots. Okay, or rather, it's going to turn my iron into molten iron as opposed to molten steel. So with this combination being the high temp first, followed by the regular smelter, I'm going to end up with nothing but molten metals coming out on this belt. Now this looks a little chaotic and a little confusing here, so I'm just going to get up and zoom up out of this a little bit. You can see a bit of the production. So what we're looking at here, if we start from the bottom center, that is 100% of our resources, our molten product is coming in on the bottom. If we follow the left leg, when we get to the first splitter, it's 50-50. When we go to the next splitter, we're dropping to 25 and 25. And you'll see that as that goes up and around, it goes to another splitter. So I want 25 on the far left-hand side. Okay. I don't have a pointer. That far left-hand side over there, that's 25. So this splitter here is the one I'm referring to in the center of the screen underneath the drone. And it's splitting 25 out the left and 25 out the right. As this comes up, that 25 is being split to 12.5 and 12.5. And then as that goes up, it's being split down into 6.25 and 6.25. I want to add that 6.25 to the first 25 over here in this merger, so that before it gets to this splitter, I actually have 31.25. So I've got very close to a third of my molten product heading in this direction. And then I'm splitting that. I'm getting about 15.6 on each of these belts of product. And there's a reason for this. I'll explain it. Okay, so 15.6, well, 15.625 here, 15.625 here. Okay, now we'll go back to these splitters. The output on this splitter here goes across to this merger, and the other output from this splitter goes across to this merger. Because for this center, we want the lines share. So what happens here is, if we go back to the first one where we're splitting things 50-50 and we go down the other leg, this splitter here now is going 25-25. So I'm taking 25% of my molten product and it's coming up to this merger, which is going into my bar roller. So 25% of what we're making is going directly into a bar roller to make the bars, because we are going to need a little bit of aluminum bar if we decide that we want to craft built turbo motors, and what else is getting built from that. There's another product that's getting built from that. I can't recall off the top of my head what it is, but anyways, we're going to need some bars. That takes care of that. The other 25 is coming this way, and it's being combined with the excess from these other spots here. So I'm taking my my 25, my 12.5, my 6.25, and it's all running down the center here. So I'm getting close to 40%, give or take, down this belt. And if I get out of the drone here, we'll go over the what these are doing here. Okay, so we'll look at the numbers here in a second. Okay, so here's where I'm going. My 31.25 is coming down. I'm splitting here, so I've got about 16 or 15.625 going into here and into there. On this side here, there's my coil roller, and then my plate shear. Okay. So that's giving me all of my plate products. On this side here, I've got my rod roller because I need rod. The center one, which is getting the lion's share of items, this is my bloom roller, okay, followed by my beam roller, okay, because I need a lot of steel beam, all right? And I'm going to explain what my decision making was for getting this set up this way. And then, of course, over here we have our bar roller. Okay. Now, right now, this is just the storages with overflow. There's nothing in these right now. These are all empty. Everything on this whole network is empty because I want to show you how this works and why I came up with these numbers. So, I'll double check the wash plant. And I'll show you what I've done with the wash plant here. So we've got our pump set here. It comes down into a splitter. The splitter feeds the wash plant, and then it comes down this side over here, and it feeds the froth floater. Now you can set yours up any way you want. This is just roughly how I've got things laid out. Okay. So if we go and we look, wash plant has nothing in it. There's water being fed to it. And there's no other storage places here. So I'm going to just take a stack of material. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to drop it in this, and you'll see what the outputs are. So we're going to take pay dirt first. That's going to be the first thing that you get in the thing. We're going to consume that. We're just going to let that process. So you'll see if I can get back in the drone here. You can see the product there coming down the belt. For whatever reason right now, they've got it in the game. It turns into boxes as it populates the belts. And then on the splitters there, it turns back into dirt. So the animation is just a little bit on the funky side. But it's a work in progress. So everything over here is done what it's supposed to do. We've got our materials coming through, went through the trommel, went through the wash plant, and now we've got our product starting to fill up in that last silo, and everything's running down those belts. Everything's processing the way that it should process. So let's go look at our actual amounts that have accumulated in the storage silos here. Once these finish off, and then and like I said, I'm going to explain why that this is set up and why this is a little bit, it seems kind of convoluted. We'll go in here. We're just going to look at this right now. So here's what we got. All that we have out of that whole mess, just the pay dirt, is we've got gold, diamond ore, ruby ore, and silicone. Okay. So I'm just going to take these out. I'm going to move this stuff down in my inventory. I'm going to take this stuff out and put it down low in my inventory here. This is because this is all we can get from pay dirt. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to run your ruby ore and your diamond ore through some small wash plants. Okay. You want to run them through the small wash plants, and that's going to process your gems. Okay. And then you can sell those. So now that this is empty, let's go run some crushed rock through it, and we'll see what this yields here. I'm trying to be quick here, but this is a blasted rock, pardon me. So we're going to put some blasted rock through there. We'll consume that. So we'll see here, same thing. The blasted rock comes in. You can see now it's coming down through the froth floater as well. And then those resources are going back up to that belt. They're populating that belt, and they're going through. There's nothing coming through the other spots because we don't have anything going through the shaker screen. So this belt here is not being used. And we have nothing going through the trommel. So this belt up here is not being used. This is all just what's coming from the froth floater. So again, you can see how it's going through the smelters And then it's populating those belts down there in the ratios that I described. And then those items are coming and they're stockpiling in those that last silo there. So we'll wait for this to tidy itself up. Looks like it's just draining that belt there now. We'll hop our scrawny self over to this. We'll have a look at this last thing here. Once that everything's all said and done, that's it. Okay. So here's what we have. Now, the reason why that things were split in that fashion is because you need certain things to build certain things in this game. You need certain things to be able to manufacture your steel frames or your steel ceilings, floors, walls. You need different items for the steel staircase. Steel mesh even, and also steel windows. I mean, if you wanted to just make steel windows and sell them back to the shop, you get quite a bit of money for a steel window. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. So what I did is I calculated that what a certain ratio would, what I would think would be appropriate, and your numbers may be different. But what I think would be appropriate in the game, I think for every single frame that I build in the game, and I'll show you these items here. I want to be able to build these frames. I want to be able to build these meshes. I want to be able to build the staircase, walls. I want to be able to build the steel windows. And I want to be able to build the steel floor or steel ceiling. It's the same thing. Okay. So when I'm going about and I'm planning to build these items, it's costing me a certain amount of resources to build all of these different items. Now, I'm not going to put a ton of frames down on the map. I'm not. And I'm not going to put a ton of the mesh on the map. I'm not. I am going to use the mesh, but I'm not putting a ton of it. I'm not putting a ton of the steel wall on the map. I'm not putting a ton of the steel window on the map. I'll put a few. But what I am putting a ton of is I'm putting an absolute ton of steel floor on the map. So here's the ratios that I use for these items. The steel windows basically for me are a product that I'm going to sell to make money. The steel mesh I'm going to use for decoration and make it look like my mine looks like a proper mine. The steel walls I'm going to use for a few buildings here and there to make things look a little bit more tidy, a little bit more realistic. The steel frames I'm going to put underneath a few of my stuff so I don't have floaty bits and it doesn't look stupid. But not a lot. The steel floors I'm going to put everywhere. Everywhere. And get this. The steel floor uses the same ingredients as the steel ceiling. The only difference is one has got this diamond checker plate on it and one of them is virtually smooth and looks almost like a concrete block. But it's steel. Uses the same resources. So if you want a smooth surface, use the steel ceilings. And if you want this checker plate stuff, you use the steel floor. But it uses the same resources. Okay, so here's where I did the math. I decided that the ratios that I want is for every one steel frame that I use, for every one. Oh, and one thing that I didn't get was I didn't get the staircase. Where is that? There we go. Oh, I got a bunch on me already. Oh, and I've got a bunch of steel ceilings too. There you go. So you can see the difference now. So that's what it looks like. I mean, the texture, it looks almost like just a concrete, flat concrete pad. These look great for a road if you paint them black or charcoal gray. They look great for a asphalt road, and then you can just put lines on them, whatever. Anyways, and so to make these products, For every single frame, if I make one frame and I make one staircase, for every time that I do that, I've decided I'm going to want probably about 200 of these. Okay? About 200, give or take. And the mesh, same thing, about 200. Okay. But the window, because the window is going to be making me money, I want about 500. Just roughly. Okay. So to get those ratios right, each frame, each one of these frames uses 8 steel beam and 4 bolts and nuts. Now to make the bolts and nuts, I need ingots. So, because I don't have an automation for that just yet. To make the floor or the ceilings over here, I need 4 steel beams, 2 bolts and nuts, and 4 steel sheet. To make the staircase, I need 2 steel beams, 2 bolts and nuts, 5 steel sheet, and 2 steel rod. And to make the window, all I need to make the window is 2 steel beam. That's it. So if I have a surplus of steel beams, I can make the steel windows and sell them. I'll show you what that's worth in a second here. Okay. And then to make the mesh, all I need is 4 bolts and nuts and 4 steel rod. So when you do the math on all this stuff and you add up all the ratios of everything that you need, that means that I'm going to need about 39% of my production needs to be steel beam. About 26% of my production needs to be bolts and nuts, which is ingot essentially. About 17% of my production needs to be steel sheet. And about 17% of my production needs to be steel rod. Okay. So that is why all of this nonsense exists. That's why all of this works the way that it works. So let's go look and see if we got numbers close to what I'm talking about. Because we just ran one stack through. All right. So what we're looking for is the, I'm just going to trade these around here. So we need the steel beam. So we need beam, and then we need ingot, steel ingot, and then we're going to need steel sheet, and then we're going to need steel rod. Okay, so what I should have is, according to the numbers, I should have the lion's share should be beam. I should have the most beam, and I should have about half amount of is ingots, and then half again for the sheet and the rod. Okay, so I can tell I've got a slight overproduction of rod. I've got a slight underproduction of sheet, and my relationship of beam to steel is pretty much bang on. A little bit heavy on the steel. Yeah, the ingot. Okay, however, I don't want to have 8 million splitters and mergers to get these numbers exact. I got these, the rest of this stuff down here is all just going to end up being sold or you know, used off. I need some aluminum for making, I need some aluminum for making, built, there's 2 items in the shop that you need. We can go look here real quick. Good Lord, I can't remember this stuff to save my life. But anyways, that's the ratios that you need for this stuff. And a lot of this stuff, you'll be making so much money, you're going to end up just buying the stuff anyways. So yeah, the built turbo, you need aluminum to make that. And then there was one other thing that you need here. Was it the ECU? Yeah, the ECU you need aluminum for as well. Lithium for the battery. Hydraulic, that's steel. The injector is steel. The hose is steel. What else do you need to make? You need to make the RAM here. That's steel plus steel rod. The sensor, steel and electronic parts. Your electronic parts are plastics and copper. So we've got copper ingot there as well. Yeah, okay. So if you wanted to make the repairable components for your vehicle, you're creating those components all right here. So so let's have a look and see now what these items are when you go to sell them. Okay, so when you go to sell, if you go to sell a single steel block, it's $2,100. The steel window, $700 for 2 pieces of steel beam, just 2. That frame has 8. This is 2. This is 8. Yeah. So to me, this should be 4 times. Should be $2,800. It's only 2,100, which over one unit, that's not a lot. But when you do this hundreds of times, that's a big difference. Not only that, but the steel block is also using 4 bolts and nuts. The window is not using anything. Nothing. Okay. So now your steel floor and ceiling. So there's a floor and ceiling. $1,750 for that. The mesh, $1,190. And the wall, $1,750 as well. So, so you guys, you get to see what, and honestly, sometimes I don't set up the wash plants. I'll just simply dump the diamond ore and the ruby ore as raw resources. The silicone I'll keep for making rubber tires when you get a little bit further along. But yeah, so that's why I did this ratio thing. Now let's dump some raw ore through there so we can see that it does go through the shaker and that this setup functions as intended. So we'll put a stack of iron and copper. I can see it on the belt there just populating now. So it's going through the shaker. It's coming out the back of the shaker and it's coming along the belt and it's going along doing its thing. And it'll just, the iron will become steel because it's going through there first. Now this process, you're not going to end up with any iron ingot. Okay. You're getting 0 molten iron. You're not getting any iron ingot. You're only getting steel because of the way that this is set up. Now, if I wanted in my production, if I wanted iron, then as this is coming along here, I would do another splitter network similar to that. So I could split off 25% or whatever to make iron, in which case I would feed it through smelters similar to this, but backwards. I'd put 25%, well, not even 25%. God, that's an awful lot. And not even 12%. I'd split it right down so I did like 6%. So same as I did on the leg over here, multiple splitters to get that done, and then just merge everything else. So this side, 50-50, and then the next splitter, 25-25, oops. And then this way here, the next splitter, 12.5, the next splitter here, 6.25, 6.25. I would take 6.25 and I would put it into a reverse smelter setup. So you'd be going through a regular smelter first and then a high temp smelter. Okay. And that's going to give you your iron ingot. That's if you're making barrels. Okay. A lot of the production now doesn't require the barrels, but I mean, you do you if that's what you want to do. This is just simply if you wanted to do an efficient steel production, how would you do it? The logic behind doing it, so that hopefully this little guide will help somebody and they'll see what, yeah, we've just added a bunch more steel to the whole mix here because all that iron just got turned into steel. So, but our ratios should still be about the same. We should still be looking about 40% in beam. Yeah, 39% in beam, 26% in ingot. So about half should be ingot. So it's very close in ingot. And then 17% in the sheet and the rod. And these are very close. So these top 4 items, that allows me to make all of my steel stuff that I need. I still have a little touch of copper, aluminum, and a lithium for when I need to make other stuff in the in the production. And then I would just take these other items here and I would just sell them. They're not it's not needed, so we can just hit P, sell. I mean, and you're making huge amounts of money just selling this stuff. So, but yeah, that's pretty much the end of this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, please ask away. I'm interested in discovering and learning this game as the game evolves. They're doing so much. They're pushing so much fresh content in this. I'm pretty sure that automation for the nuts and bolts and stuff is coming down the road. As for now, what you have to do is you'll be taking your steel ingots and stuff, and you're going to be coming over to these two. These are your two principal machines here. You're going to want to run and make your bolts and nuts in your CNC mill. And this is also where you make your 10 components. Don't make all the other components, like don't make piston rods and cam axles and weird things like that. Don't make this stuff. If you want to see what you need to make in a vehicle, just hop into any vehicle, press I for your inventory, and scroll down to parts. These 10 items, these are the items that you're going to want to be able to craft. Your filter, battery, turbo, injector, okay? And that's it. I do rubber as well because I'll craft different wheels and whatever. But you can if you make enough money, you can just buy the stuff. If you want a little bit more authenticity, a little more realism, you can set up and fabricate the stuff as well. Same thing with the production. You can buy all these things. It costs a whole lot more than simply making them in the game. So if you're doing a large build and you want to make these things, you can set up a few of these tables and just put the materials in there, the resources in there. Now, admittedly, you still have to use sneaker net, right? You're still going to have to go over. I'd put the workbench right next to my storage silo, and then you just grab the stuff out of the storage silo, and you just pivot, drop it inside here. Say, okay, I want to make this many steel block, or I want to make 1,000 steel ceilings, or whatever the components are that you want to make. And you can have more than one bench doing it and running while you're off, harvesting and mining more resources. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Like I said, any questions? Fire them down in the doobly-doo. You know how this works. Cheers.